on screen.
Welcome to First Contact.
Make first contact right here. Here?
Actually, over there.
Actually, right here. I am your host, Davan Skelhorn, and my guest for this initial First Contact segment, our interview segment here on Locutors of Trek, is Andre Myette of the Graphic Histories Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Devin. It's great to be here, and it's great to hear you say your last name, so now I know how to do it from now on.
That's no problem. I get
Thanks
that
for
a
having
lot.
me. This is a real pleasure.
Cool. So you're welcome. Start off with a little interview of Andre here.
Oh yeah.
How's that sound, Andre?
Yes.
All right.
Bring it
this
on.
is our diplomatic introductions here at First Contact. Andre is an artist, a podcaster, and a professional wrestler. Is that not correct, Andre?
That is correct. I'm also a trivia host,
Trivia host,
and an actor. So yes, a lot of things, but all of those do fall into those categories for sure. I have a card that just says "man." That's all right. I have a card that just says "Man About Town" with like a huge list on the back of all the things I do, and it's a gas to pass it out to people. For sure.
That gives me a lot of places to go with questions, so that's good.
That's
the
right.
longer the list, the better.
Excellent.
You join us from Truro, Nova Scotia, yes?
Correct. Yes, I am living here in the hub of Nova Scotia,
on the muddy shores of the Minas Basin.
Yeah, actually, yes, I actually live very close to the Bay of Fundy. It's like I can see it from my window. It's right there.
Very nice. Tied in or out?
Oh, it's quite in right now. Quite in, because
good.
all the land around here, like I live in an area called Old Barns, where there's like a lot of farms, and there were quite a few flooding because of all the recent rain. So like quite a few areas and big fields are just flooded right to the rim right now. So
well, we had some good rain there the other day.
Yes, indeed. Biblical. It's like 100 millimeters or something. It's like the most they've had since, I don't know, a couple decades.
My koi pond was very full.
Oh, happy koi.
Yeah, for sure. They got all this new space. So you're professional wrestling.
Yes.
Did you have a wrestling hero growing up? In Truro.
Well, I grew up beside of Antigonish. I moved to Truro for school when I was 18, but I grew up in a little community called Bayfield or Afton Tracadie, that area. If you're going through, if anybody's familiar with the Nova Scotia geography, if you're passing through on your way to Port Hawkesbury or Cape Breton in that area, you kind of have to go through it from Antigonish. It's about 15 minutes from the town proper. But I grew up watching old school wrestling, of course, like stuff from the late 80s, early 90s. And I always really liked, when I was a kid, I loved the Ultimate Warrior. Like, he's far from any inspiration for me as far as character or wrestling style goes. Like, I've never emulated anything he did, but just as a kid, he was just such a larger-than-life sort of character. But I always was really drawn to, like, Macho Man and some of the bad guys, just because they're the more interesting characters. You know, like Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, was a huge inspiration for me growing up and kind of on my heel wrestling character that I had for a lot of years. And as time went on and I got into like wrestling as a younger teenager and then older teenager, Kurt Angle was my number one, still is of all time, best of all time, hands down.
Interesting. That's cool.
But a lot of love.
Did you go to the local shows as well, like to see the Beasts and the Cuban Assassins and those types of films?
I was kind of right in the cusp of when like that was fading away and like when I was old enough to really pay attention. And like real action wrestling was coming up, which is like a lot of the guys that were in Grand Prix doing their own thing. And I've wrestled with quite a few of those guys as the years went on, like Cowboy Mike Hughes and Brody Steele and Wildman Gary Williams, Trash Canyon, all those guys. So I kind of got to know them a little bit growing up. And then, of course, when I got into wrestling, I got to know them a lot better, which is pretty cool. But I have been on tour with some of the old guys like the Cuban Assassin and Leo Burke, who's super cool. And always one of the coolest people as far as wrestling goes in this area that I've ever met. And one of the best of all time, hands down.
Oh, yeah.
Like Bret Hart. Right? Yeah, Bret Hart references him all the time as being like one of the best that taught him a lot. So, because he went through the Stampede and did all that sort of stuff as well.
That would do it. It's a small wrestling community here in the Great White North.
Kinda. I mean, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger as with all these new outlets that are coming here and there.
It's still regional.
Yeah, that is true. Still, I do wish it was sort of the old days where there was like a territory system, where you had regional champions and you fight off for the territory champion. I mean, those are sort of the heyday of the coolness of wrestling. But with like internet and the fact that there's so many different promotions and you have to get them all to agree, which is impossible. If you've tried to organize wrestling, it's impossible. I think the chance of that ever happening again are long gone. But it's still cool. Like it's still like. To think that could happen someday is really a nice idea.
I think people would like it for sure.
I agree.
Do you have a favorite match you've done?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I'm proud of a lot of them. I've wrestled some like names, people that have been made it in the WWE or some other companies over the years, and they've always been fun matches. But a lot of the best ones I've ever had are just with actually a guy that I started with. His name's Chris Cook, the Big Picture. And because he's like an innovative guy, he was always open to do different stuff and something new and exciting. We always come up with cool stories and stuff that really gets the crowd going. So I had a really good match with him here in Truro one time for IHW years ago for the Red Rock Wrestling Championship, which I'd lost to him the week before. It was a rematch for it, and it was a super, super cool match. It was one of the, as far as stuff like that. But I guess most recently, I wrestled for UCW in Guysborough, which is very close to where I grew up, and a lot of my family came out. And there was probably like 25 people in the audience that all knew me or were related to me or something like that, or people, and just people that knew I was from the area and were there to support it as well. So on top of that, with the hundreds that were there, it was like the loudest crowd I've ever heard in my life, and just hearing like all those people chanting old school or Andre or something, that effect was pretty neat. So it was more recently, that'd be the one that stands out for me.
And you got the biggest pop of the night.
I did, yes. I'll take the credit for that one. I'm usually pretty humble.
Oh yeah,
for that one, I'll take the credit.
You're in your hometown.
That's right. That's right. I gotta get the rub when I can.
So tell the people about your art. I have some of your artwork that I picked up on your walls. Andre and I actually met sitting next to each other at a comic convention in Dartmouth.
Yeah, I remember. You had your own comic out, which is
it actually never came to fruition.
No?
I became a podcaster instead, and the artist had a baby and moved away and
had a life, went on to have real life. Yeah,
so that sort of fell apart and found my true calling.
Yeah, the stuff you're writing was great. So I'm hoping you haven't gotten away from that. I really enjoyed it. I do a lot of retro kind of style prints, a lot of like one color, a lot of tribute sort of art to like the old like t-shirt style, kind of like where it's all sort of a monochromatic sort of thing. I do kind of fluctuate between that and some traditional artwork. Like most recently, a friend of mine, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, Andrew Clark. You know Andrew? He does an independent comic called Adam. He's out of the Halifax.
I'm familiar with that one. I don't think I've seen the name around. I think, but
yeah, super cool guy. So he's doing a Kickstarter for his My Cat's making an appearance in your show there. I think you see him over my chair. So yeah, he's doing. He has this comic called Adam, which is sort of like a kind of I want to say paranormal investigator, just sort of like a kind of a Constantine type, but more of kind of a badass sort of character. And he so he was doing a Kickstarter, and he asked for me to do kind of a print that he's going to have as one of his incentives for the Kickstarter. So that's recently gone up online. There's the art for it. That's just the inks,
very nice.
The pencil, the inks. So I did the character with Frankenstein through Igor. And so you can see the colored stuff on social media. I believe I have it on the Graphic Histories Podcast Facebook page. I think it shows up there tomorrow, but it's also on his stuff for his Kickstarter. So yeah, a lot of that sort of stuff. It's very nerd based. And like if I did a lot of Marvel movies. I do like Stranger Things, stuff like that. Like just things that really appeal to me. I kind of want to do a squid. What's the one you have?
I have Agent Carter, and I also have Ant-Man.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm looking. I've kind of fell off. Obviously, with COVID, there's been no convention, so I haven't had as much, drive to keep doing new ones at the moment until the cons come back. I have a few that I had printed just before things had gone on that are still sitting, in my basement. So hopefully, when conventions come back, I can bust those out. I got ones for like the Joker and the Mandalorian and some other stuff like that were kind of big at the time that I was a fan of. So yeah, I'm excited to get back on the con.
Did they do a decaf this year?
Yes, but I was wrestling, I believe, that weekend, so I was unable to attend, unfortunately. I know they did HowCon, but that was a very bare bones version. I was also in a play as an actor that I was on the same weekend, so I wasn't able to attend that, unfortunately. But
that was going to be my next question. Tell us about your acting.
Yeah, I do some film stuff when it's around. It's coming back around now in this area. I was in a Stephen King movie a few years ago called Big Driver that was on, I think it was a Life Network or one of those, which was surprisingly gritty and dark for a movie on the Life Network. But it was like
King, Life Network.
Yeah, I know. It's like rape and murder and revenge and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, And so it was actually really cool. I got to act with Maria Bello, who she shows up in a lot of stuff. She was in. Do you ever see History of Violence?
Oh yeah,
the Cronenberg movie. Yeah, she's the wife of that.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in. Yeah, as one of my favorites. She was in like The Mummy 3. She took over for Rachel Weisz's character. She was in a bunch of.
Is that the Scorpion one?
No, that was the second one. The Emperor, the Dragon Emperor is the third one. With Jet Li as the Chinese mummy. Yeah, so she's in a lot of cool stuff. Like I'm not doing her a service to remember everything she's been in, but she's been in a lot of cool stuff. And Olympia Dukakis was in it too, who won an Oscar. So that was kind of.
I met Olympia once.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was a concierge at a hotel. She was
really. Was it when I was doing this movie? Maybe.
I was like 18. This was a long time ago.
Well, this movie is probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little less than that. 8 years ago, maybe.
Longer, way longer.
Okay, cool. Well, they did film. She did film. She did film other movies here, so she's probably here for like maybe Cloudburst or one of those other ones that would have came out probably around that time.
I think Paul Sorvino might have been here at the same time. Might have been
really
with him.
Sorvino, yeah, cool.
Yeah, he was staying at the hotel too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, she was super sweet, and it was cool doing a scene with her. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that got me.
She's a nice lady. It would have been great to do a scene with her.
But it was like 3 a.m. It was the last scene of the whole movie. It was super late, and I got shot in the neck and in the head, and we had scenes together where after I was dead, I was talking to her. It's kind of like a dream sequence, and it was interesting. It was cool though, and I got to work with a friend of mine, Mark DeVoe, who's a special effects artist here locally.
I know Mark as well. He turned me into Jesus for a movie trailer once.
Oh, really? It can't be that hard. It couldn't have been.
No, it was just a bunch of scars.
It's gonna scar you up. You got to get that Jesus scar on you. So and that got me in the union, and I've done stuff here and there. In theater acting, I've always done since pretty much I moved to Toronto. It was just kind of a whim. I got involved with it and really enjoy it. So I'm actually working on about a year from now. I'm going to be doing hopefully a stage play version of Frankenstein here for Halloween. So it's kind of my plan right now. We're going to see how it goes, but I have to submit it to the board of directors for the theater group a bit and make sure it's all okay to go forward. But it's the script from the Nick Deere one that was on stage that Benedict Cumberbatch did about 10 years ago.
Okay,
so
wow.
It's him and Johnny Lee Miller both did it, and it's the closest adaptation I've ever seen to the book, like the closest as far as the book goes. It's very true to the source material and pretty far removed from the like the one in that picture, the Universal Monsters version. So,
which is great, but it's not like the book.
No, it's great, but I mean, the book has all these great themes about creation and fatherhood and life and what it means to be human and why that's a conflict, the confliction between everybody with good and evil, and how the more the creature becomes human, the more he learns to hate and to be angry and mad and sad and all the things that make us human. And it's got some super deep themes that. A lot of those fun Universal movies, I love those movies, miss out on.
Well said. Did you have a favorite movie growing up? Or a couple?
I'm a huge movie person. I watch a lot of movies, and I love movies.
So do I.
Yes. And actually, it's a question I usually ask people is, what's your favorite movie? And if I haven't seen it, I'll just go watch it because it means this much to somebody. And by doing that, I've seen a lot of cool movies. I've seen a lot of really bad movies. But I don't think there's wasted experiences when it comes to movies. You take something away from it. So if I had to pick my favorite movie of all time, movies, you can pick a favorite movie critically based on, a lot of criteria, or you can pick one based on that criteria and how it made you feel or where it was in your life or that sort of stuff. So I say my favorite movie was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because it's a fantastic movie by itself, but it's got everything. It's a period piece. It's a mystery. It's scary. It's hilarious. There's some romance in there. It's got a buddy cop comedy kind of thing to it. Some of the humor still kills me. It's still like if I watch the movie now today, I still lose it. Judge Doom's one of the best villains of all time.
Oh, is he ever?
Oh,
Matt
hands
Frewer,
down.
legend.
No, it was Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, it was Christopher Lloyd, not Matt.
Matt Frewer's the other tall, skinny, bald guy.
Yeah.
Max Headroom. That's Matt Frewer.
Yeah, Max Headroom.
Yeah, I love Matt Frewer too, but no, it wasn't Lloyd.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I had a Roger Rabbit poster on my door as a child. I love that.
Oh, excellent! Well. Yes,
it was scary.
yeah. When he melts the shoe, and when the whole. Spoiler alert. I guess the movie's been out for 30-something years, probably more. No, geez, when it came out, 89, 88, somewhere in there. So, but it's great. Bob Hoskins is fantastic. The cast, you got Looney Tunes interacting with Warner Brothers characters interacting with Disney characters, which at the time was unheard of. There's even like all these
good.
It does, like Donald Duck and Daffy, like having a piano war and all the stuff with Jessica. Like it's all really, really good. And
that's a good pick.
As far as like, if I just say like artsy, critical, like put on my beret and my scarf film, I'd say No Country for Old Men. But
really, it's a good movie.
Yeah, I'm a big Coen Brothers fan. Everything they do is money to me.
Oh
there's few directors that have been.
Fargo again recently.
Have you watched the show?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the last season, but man, I love the show.
I love that first season. That was the one with Billy Bob, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
He was one of the best villains of all time in that movie, that show. And it's hard to like all the seasons have been great, and I've always taken something away from each of them in a different way. But I'm a big fan of the show. So
I like in a villain where you can't quite figure out what their angle is, and that's his whole thing in that first season of the show.
But even
where's he coming from? Like, what's going on here? It's like,
and there's so many like Martin Freeman, and like there's so many good actors in it, and like the whole thing with him and Colin Hanks's character, and at the end when they finally have that final face off, and he answers the riddle he told them when they first met, and it's all so like. The Coen Brothers and like Cormac McCarthy and extension the Coen Brothers with Cormac McCarthy's material, which is No Country for Old Men. But any of that sort of stuff, like that sort of existentialist, like the bad guy almost represents like the evil in humanity, or like the shifting in what's considered evil, and how things like that movie has such a really good, like No Country for Old Men specifically does such a good job of depicting like the shift in like crime around the 80s, like when or the 70s and 80s is when things started getting more violent, and there's less respect amongst criminals, and it became more like a bloodbath, and the poor cop played by Tommy Lee Jones, who's just trying to make sense of all this insanity. And Shigar, who basically represents like death or change or some combination of the two, and this sort of complete, almost inhuman quality to him. There's like a code, a weird code. And I don't know, it's just I could talk about it all day. It's so good. It's fantastic.
We could another podcast.
What's your favorite movie, Devin?
Oh man. Okay, well, same criteria you used, I guess.
Yeah, we got it for you.
Yeah. I guess for the one that makes me feel. I guess. Have you ever seen? I've seen this one. I don't know. This movie's relaxing to me, and I've seen it probably like 100 times. Have you ever seen Medicine Man starring Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco?
I have not, but I've never heard. Oh, I got to watch it now. So I have to.
It's my favorite Sean Connery movie.
Really?
And he's in a lot of great movies. More so
than League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Well, I forgot about that one, but I just see him as his character in that one. I forgot it was even Sean Connery.
That movie was so bad. But no, I have not seen that movie. I love Connery as well. Actually, it's funny.
Medicine Man, yeah. No, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, when I think of Sean Connery, I often bring up a little known. It's like his first movie that he did for Disney back in the 70s. It was called Darnie McGill and the Little People. And hardly anyone's ever heard of that movie, but I watched it a lot growing up. So it's on the Wonderful World of Disney all the time. And
we had it taped off the TV on a videotape.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
And it was a fairly. I think it's on Disney Plus. I really want to watch it again because if I recall correctly, it was fairly disturbing. Like I remember, like there's the old man was supposed to be taken away by death at the end, and there's like
and he like fiddles a lot, right?
Yeah, yes he does, and he's always hanging out with the Leprechaun King. Brian, which is a great name for Leprechaun King. Just Brian.
What a weird movie.
This is my mythical friend. His name is George. You know, like it's just such. I mean, it's Irish, so I mean, O'Brien, Brian, whatever. But it's just, yeah, and it was an interesting movie. With like you don't see a lot of movies based on leprechauns. So, like, in kind of a serious folklore-y sort of way, besides like the Warwick Davis horror movies, which you know are another thing. But
No.
yeah, so it's just. But I mean, I love the Untouchables and his Bond was great. Like anything, and Highlander, of course. I mean, anything that Connery did. The Rock. I do subscribe to the theory that his character in The Rock is in fact James Bond. I think I totally
subscribe to that as well. Yeah.
I do. As little as I like,
Makes
Michael
the movie
Bay,
so much better for me.
It does. It totally does. It makes it okay for me to like a Michael Bay movie.
That's what we call headcanon here on Locutors of Trek. We're always adding things from Star Trek we like that aren't official
I like that.
to our headcanon.
I like that. I'll have to remember that. It's a good phrase.
So, and I guess I'd have to pick another one, probably Blues Brothers. I love that movie.
I just watched that for the first time about a year ago.
Really?
Yes.
It must have been.
I saw this. I saw the second one when it came out, but I never saw the original one until recently. It's great, fantastic movie. And he's
my favorite Dan Aykroyd. He's just everything.
He's a straight man, which is rare for him, though. You know,
but it's so funny. He's just like, we're on a mission from God. He's just so like serious about that. It's like we're putting the band back together.
I think one of my favorite scenes in cinematic history is when Carrie Fisher catches up to them and he's groveling and every excuse in the book he possibly can pull out as to why he never came back to her, he pulls out and warms her heart yet again. But it's just I mean, Belushi was an icon for a reason. He's fantastic. And
doesn't that scene end with him kissing her and dropping her in the mud?
Just dropping her and running and just leaving her behind again. Or that when she blows up the building and they all come out of the rubble and it's just like nothing happened. They dust themselves off and get in their car and drive off again.
They're on a mission from God. It's
That's
such a
right.
good...
The stuff with the nun is fantastic too. And she's like, doors are closing and yeah, exactly.
Knocks him down the staircase.
Yeah, it's so good.
But the music's really good in it too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But why don't you tell us about this?
Yes.
I'm a fan.
Yes, you are. You're one of my vocal fans on social media, which is nice to see. To know people out there and listening and enjoying it. It's called the Graphic History Podcast. It was my COVID project, I guess, when COVID started. It was something I was wanting to do for a while, and then when I was on lockdown, I said, "Well, no time like the present." Initially, I thought it'd be fun to do a show where I just go, because all these characters are popping up in movies now that have deep and long comic book histories. So the initial core concept was, well, I'll just explain the entire comic book history of these characters that are popping up in movies, which was fun. But as time went on, I started doing, actually not even that time went on, I think it was the second episode, I did an interview episode where I had Ed Burson on, who's a comic writer, lives in Halifax. And then I kind of realized that I really much more enjoyed the interview portion of it. And like, it was almost a slog to come up, to pile through mountains of continuity, which is fun. And I do enjoy it. But I feel like I felt like my talents are better used like talking to people and doing this sort of thing. So I kind of shelved the comic book history side of it and just stuck with the interviews only. So now it's a bi-weekly show, and hopefully I'll be busy enough that I can make it a weekly show or maybe even a twice a week show. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of like Mark Maron's podcast, WTF. And I kind of like the idea of taking that format, shifting a little bit and focusing on like nerdy comic book. At first it was comic books, but it's sort of anything that's in the nerd culture, actors, special effects. I had Mark on the show, special effects artists, people that do podcasts themselves, writers, artists, anything like that. I recently had some a bunch of Canadian people on it, which was cool. So in the upcoming episode that just came on, I had Jack Briglio, and the next episode is Jay Torres, who does quite a few comics and worked for quite a few of the big companies. So, and it's a Canadian guy with some interesting stories. He has an interesting connection to Drake, which is fun to talk about. So he works on a graphic. Sorry, go ahead.
You scrapped the comic stuff entirely. You're just doing interviews entirely on that show.
Yes, yeah. So I kind of thought, well, and also I would find on social media, I'd hit like a YouTube ad for like Screen Rant or one of those sites that are like, find out everything you need to know about Hawkeye, and like whoever the villain is in the new Hawkeye show that came out today, in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, these guys, and they have this great production of it with all this stuff. And I'm like, me just kind of making some jokes through continuity for half an hour, I don't know, can can really compete with this sort of thing. So I figured I'd just, focus on the interviews.
I'm trying to channel you right now because you're like a fine interviewer, and
Oh,
this
thanks, man.
is my first go at it. So I'm trying
I
to
can
channel
talk a
my
lot.
Andre
so feel
Myette
free.
right now.
Yeah, you could be me. Sure, go for it.
Speaking of Mark, he made those beautiful gremlins you have in the background there, didn't he?
Actually, no, he made.
Oh, didn't he?
Those ones are NECA models. I don't know
Oh.
if I can do this without screwing everything up.
Oh, he made you a gremlin though, right?
He did this
yeah,
one.
Yeah,
that one's from a model kit from I think it was Taiwan or something, and this is Spike from Gremlins 2. The other ones are NECA replicas of the puppets that were used in the filming of the show, of the movies themselves. There's the Flasher one from 1, and there's a regular Gremlin and Stripe, and you can see his white mohawk is there. Also, I have some Mogwais back there too. There's Stripe when he's a Mogwai, and Gizmo.
Gotta have a Giz.
You gotta have a Gizmo. You got it. He's right by Baby Yoda. You can kind of make a Baby Yoda back there.